Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. If you like our programs, remember to tell your friends. You can click there to follow and to listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So what's going on this week? Well, the trial of Donald Trump in New York on charges of falsification of business records is drawing to a close. The defense has rested. The prosecution has rested. Next week, they're going to come back. They're going to make closing statements. The judge is going to instruct the jury, and they are going to decide his fate. It was not the trial that many anticipated. I think the evidence was stronger against Donald Trump. I think he didn't use the trial the way he wanted to, which was to appear defiant, to appear strong. He slept through a lot of it. He came out and he was whiny, he complained about the temperature. And of course, he set up this situation in which these pawns of his, these toadies, all dressed in red ties, blue suits, white shirts, toddled up to New York to pay homage to him. So I think in some ways he did damage to himself as well as to the Republican Party. But what really matters is what the jury is going to say. And I have to say, if he is convicted, and I think chances are that he will be, it will in large part be because of him. I think it was he who goaded his lawyers into asking way too many questions on cross-examination, so that whatever points they scored were lost in a just blur of nonsensical questions. I think it was he who encouraged Todd Blanche to scream, to screech really, at Michael Cohen, which did not make a good impression on the jury. And I think it was he who frankly forced his attorneys in their opening statement to say they were basing their theory of the case on the fact he never had an affair with Stormy Daniels. Now, of all the defenses, that seems to be the weakest, because of course he did. She was entirely believable, and there was no evidence to the contrary. So why make that claim? Why go in with that unprovable and unproven kind of claim? That's because his ego is at stake. He will not let other people think that he is weak. He will not let other people be right. He will not let other people show that he has been caught in a moment of weakness. And ultimately, of course, he did not testify. Am I surprised? On one level, no, because it would have been suicidal for him to testify. He is a liar. He is incoherent. He would be revealed to be even worse than he was described by other witnesses. But in a sense, I guess I am, because I always imagined that his ego, his desire to tell people off, was stronger than any concern he would have about conviction. But here's the thing, and I think it applies to the debates, which he said he wanted. The idea of telling people off, the idea of confronting people is very attractive to him because he thinks he's smarter and better and stronger than anyone else. He thinks he can bully people. But when it really comes to confronting people, that is to having other people ask questions of you, to have other people dispute what you are saying to your face, he crumbles. And that's because ultimately he's a coward and he's weak. He's a physical coward. We know he used every excuse in the book to get out of fighting in a war. We know that he is a moral coward who cannot confront other bullies, cannot confront evildoers, cannot tell his supporters the truth because he might lose their affection. So ultimately, I think what we get from this trial is a better sense of just how sleazy he is, but how cowardly he is. And we'll see if that continues on through the rest of the campaign. We'll see if he actually shows up to debate. I think not. Meanwhile, we have the unbelievable experience of a Supreme Court justice who flew a flag upside down over his house, a sign of identification with the mob, with those trying to overthrow the Constitution at a time he was considering cases disputing the 2020 election. That is Sam Alito. And we also got word that he sold a bunch of his Bud Light stock around the time that right-wingers were raising a hullabaloo about a trans person advertising their liquor. What does this tell us? It tells us he's a nut. It tells us just because he wears a robe and has a fancy degree, his mind is filled with junk. His mind is filled with conspiracy theories. He's as bad in some respects as Trump. Now, he says his wife was the one who flew the flag, fine, but he allowed it to stay up there. He knows what the rules of impartiality demand. He knows that even the appearance of partiality is completely unacceptable for a judge, and yet he does it. He does it because, like Trump, he's arrogant. He thinks the rules don't apply to him. He also did not disclose gifts as he should have been. He also accepted gifts from right-wing activists who have issues that they care about before the court. But this is what I think a lifetime tenure does for justices, unfortunately. It puts them out of touch. It makes them arrogant. And it actually promotes a disregard of judicial propriety, not encourage it. Now, given all of that, you would think the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee would be chomping at the bit to have a hearing, to question him, to actually demand his appearance, and to insist that finally a bill promoting ethics reform for the Supreme Court, a binding ethics structure, be put on the floor of the Senate. But no. We have Sam Alito's really attack, self-immolation of the code of ethics. And what do you have? You have Dick Durbin saying, I don't think it's really worthwhile to have hearings. Really only impeachment would be the solution, and we're not there yet. What? Do these people not know how to play? Do they not know how to make an issue? Do they not know how to alert the American people that one of our three branches of government has been utterly corrupted? What the heck is wrong with this guy? Well, he's been there too long, and he doesn't understand American politics. He doesn't understand the challenge that we face. He doesn't understand the necessity of calling Americans' attention to this outrageous dereliction of Alito's oath of office. Thank goodness, people like Senator Whitehouse and Senator Schumer are pushing back and are saying, no, I actually think we need to have hearings. And you know what? If he doesn't show up, they should begin impeachment hearings. Not because he's going to be removed, not because the House is going to actually take up impeachment, but because that's the only way to call Americans' attention to yet another atrocious attack on American institutions. You don't get this by simply allowing the press to run one story for one day during a long election season. You do it by focusing relentlessly on this MAGA mentality, which opines and promotes the idea that anything and everything is up for grabs so long as they can impose their white Christian nationalist view on the rest of us. And it is the threat that we face. It's the threat of our times. And if Democrats are not able to focus on it and to highlight it, the normalization of Trump that the media engages in is going to go on. And we will wind up with a Trump presidency, as much as I absolutely abhor the notion. Democrats have to be able to make the contrast. And you know who is making the contrast? It's President Biden. He's doing a pretty good job of it. And I'll give you an example. Over the last 24 hours or so, a video ran on Truth Social, which had a reference to the United Reich. This is the Third Reich. This is Hitler. This is fascism. Now, the Trump people say, we didn't make it, we just ran it. But they ran it, and they left it up there for overnight, almost 24 hours, frankly. And it's not the first time. This is the guy who quotes Adolf Hitler about blood purity. This is the guy who talks about a invasion of foreign forces. This is a guy who sits down to have a meal with a known Holocaust denier and anti-Semite. This is the guy who says Jews that don't vote for him are bad Jews and should have their heads examined. He is an anti-Semite, and he has delusions of dictatorial power. And the Biden administration actually jumped on that. Good for them. As we speak right now, the vice president has already spoken about this. The president is expected to speak about it. Their campaign called people's attention to it. And this is what you have to do. You have to make an issue of these things. Republicans are great. They can make an issue out of nothing, frankly. Look at their screwy impeachment hearings, which have found nothing on President Biden. But they know how to play the game. And I don't want to diminish politics by calling it a game, but you have to understand how you accomplish your aims. You don't accomplish your aims by allowing the New York Times to set your agenda. You don't accomplish what you set out to by simply rolling your eyes and saying, well, that's Trump for you. You have to bring the issue to the attention of the American people. So I give some kudos to Schumer and to White House. I certainly hope they have judicial hearings. And I give some credit to President Biden, who really has been trying to carry the message that this guy is a kook, that this guy, Donald Trump, is going to destroy our democracy. That, as he put it, something snapped in Donald Trump in 2000. And he won't accept that he lost. He won't accept any restraints on him. And so the only solution is to beat him and to make sure he doesn't get anywhere near the Oval Office. That's what Liz Cheney says. That's what the Democrats say. That's what Adam Kinzinger says. And that's what a lot of people who used to serve in his administration say. So what do you do about it? You are not powerless. You are not without options. You can make a difference. And what do? You volunteer to work on campaigns. You give some time or some money to organizations like Swing Left, which we're going to hear about later. You give money and time to organizations like the ACLU and the NAACP, which are fighting against voter suppression and voting discrimination. You volunteer to be a poll worker. You make sure you're registered to vote, all the people you know are registered to vote, and that they do vote. And you use whatever platform you have to try to correct the record and to remind people you know and who may follow the news less closely than you do about what's going on in the world. And that's how collectively we defend democracy and win the election. So remember, it's all in your hands. Bye-bye.